Hello, New York Giants fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Valentine's Views podcast here on YouTube. It's the day after the New York Giants lost to the Philadelphia Eagles 38-20, game that saw Cam Skattebo suffer what's probably a season-ending dislocated ankle, game that saw the Giants give up roughly a bazillion yards rushing to Saquon Barkley and somebody named Tank Bigsby. Uh, Game that saw horrific officiating that I'm just going to say quickly was not the reason the Giants lost, but it was still horrific officiating. And here to help me break it all down is Big Blue Views Tony DelGenio, who maybe is a little bit less hassled this morning than I am with a lot going on, and maybe we'll see what kind of perspective Tony has this morning. How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing fine, thanks.
Tony, I need to start in a place where I didn't expect to start this morning, but I need to say this. There is all kinds of vitriol out there aimed at Brian Daboll and Joe Shane this morning from the Giants fan base. There's all sorts of, fire this guy and fire that guy, and which I suppose is typical of a fan base a little bit, after a loss. But I'm just going to say this. Did anybody really expect anything different than what we saw on Sunday? Did anybody really expect the New York Giants to beat the Philadelphia Eagles twice, to go into Philly 17 days after they gave the defending Super Bowl champions an absolute beatdown, and to have the Eagles not be prepared, not be fired up, not have that crowd in Philly behind them, and to really want to remind the Giants that they are the Philadelphia Eagles, the Super Bowl champions. And I think anybody that expected an outcome that was a whole lot different than what we saw on Sunday is just fooling themselves. And in my view, other than the Cam Skattebo injury, nothing about the New York Giants is different today than it was on Sunday morning. Nothing about the New York Giants is different today than it was a week ago. So I don't know. I just don't get the seeming shock out there that the Eagles had a get right game against the Giants and won that game fairly handily.
Yeah, I think I agree with that up to a point. I did not expect the Giants to beat the Eagles. I picked the Eagles in our weekly thing. I wanted to pick the Giants, but I really didn't think, as you said, that they were going to beat the Eagles twice in the same season. And I actually thought that in the first quarter they were going mano a mano with the Eagles, and the game was tied 7-7, and I thought they were in the game, for a while, right? And I thought that the bad referee calls that took place throughout the game certainly didn't help them at all. And though, but I guess we know that the Giants have these tremendous weaknesses still, and unfortunately a lot of them are on defense. And if you have weaknesses on defense, especially weaknesses against the other team's run game, well, then the Eagles are not a good team to be playing when you have those weaknesses. And so I was not at all shocked with the final outcome of the game, but I was hoping for them to put up a better fight.
Yeah, I get that, and it did look like it would be a better fight for a while. Look, the referee stuff didn't cost the Giants the game. You can make an argument that instead of 38-20, if the game is properly officiated, that is a 31-27 loss. Okay. And we're splitting hairs, I guess. A loss is a loss. I mean, you take the you take the Saquon Barkley touchdown after the tush push travesty, take that off the board, put the Darius Slayton touchdown on the board. The Giants still lose the game. Things look a lot different, and I think the attitude's a lot different today. But no, I just wanted to say, look, from my perspective, nothing has changed really. The Giants still have a quarterback of the future they should be optimistic about. So that piece appears to be in place, and there is some young talent to build around. It has given us some really good moments this year, but the big jump that everybody wants this team to take is just not going to happen this year. It's I think it's coming, but I don't think it's going to happen this year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there are still pieces that they need, and I mean, surprisingly to me, a lot of them are on the defense.
Yeah.
We've been so concerned with the Giants having an inept offense for so long.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think we see on offense. Not that they don't need help on offense as well. All right, but we can get to that. But I think what we see now with the Giants is that as soon as you get a good quarterback in place, a quarterback who can create, a quarterback who can kind of rally the troops and and be an emotional leader, and all of a sudden an offense can be pretty good. And I think we've seen that from the Giants the last few weeks. Uh, right now, I feel like the bigger concern is the defense, and of course, yesterday they played shorthanded in the secondary, especially, and they've been playing shorthanded at linebacker most of the season. But what the Giants don't have is they don't really have good people to fill in on defense when the starters go down for the most part. And frankly, I'm pretty convinced that they don't have good coaching on the defensive side of the ball either.
I can't disagree with any of that, Tony. The missing safety Javon Holland and missing cornerback Paulson Adebo on Sunday, and then eventually having Cordale Flott get concussed by a friendly fire punch to the face, basically, by Bobby Okereke. I'm laughing, but it's not funny when a person gets a concussion. It makes you shake your head. I mean, all of that, the secondary was shorthanded, and yes, corners and safeties have something to do with the run defense, but look, Shane Bowen was always a questionable hire. Okay. In my mind, he was always a questionable hire by Brian Daboll. I remember Hard Knocks when Brian Daboll is holding his phone and showing Joe Shane, we have to hire this guy. Look at his run stats. Look at his run defense stats. Maybe he can do that for us. And that was a god awful reason to hire Shane Bowen. And we found over a year and a half that Shane Bowen doesn't have the answers. And, players play, coaches coach, and all of that. And obviously there's a certain amount of blame that has to go to players on the 65-yard run by Barkley, second play of the game. I am not a film analyst. I am not Nick Filato. I am not Chris Flum of Big Blue View, but it's crystal clear when you watch that play. Darius Muasau jumps up from his inside linebacker position and goes inside instead of going into the gap that Barkley ran in. And that, I was like, where is he going? Okay. Where is he going? And, it's crystal clear to me. And maybe it comes back to coaching. Maybe it comes back to, to guys not properly being taught, what they're expected to do on certain defensive calls. But it's crystal clear to me that when it comes to, dotting their I's and all of that. This Giants defense is not fundamentally sound. Not only does it not have enough talent up front when it comes to run defense, when it comes to pass rush, it's there with Abdul Carter, with Kayvon Thibodeau, with Brian Burns, with Dexter Lawrence, whose lack of productivity to this point, it's still making me wonder if he's 100%, if he's right, if there's not something underlying that they're not telling us about Dex, but they don't have enough talent up front to defend the run. They miss Micah McFadden, who's not a great player, but they miss him because he understands his assignments. He's where he's supposed to be. He doesn't always make the play when he gets there, but at least he's where he's supposed to be. They don't have guys as good as Brian Burns is, as good as Abdul Carter is, as good as Kayvon Thibodeau is. Those guys, in their haste to go rush the passer, they jump inside over and over and over and over and give up the edge. So they're not well coached on defense, and they don't have enough talent on the interior defensive line. And and that's obvious. I don't know what else to say when it comes to that run defense. Oh, and it would be nice if guys would make a tackle once in a while.
Right. Yeah, so I'll add a couple of things to that. First of all, I see a comment in the window. I wonder how Mara's sleeping after Barkley played yesterday, and I think the answer to that is I think the Giants are perfectly fine with their running back situation. It's a shame that Skattebo got hurt and is out for the year, but I think the Giants are thrilled to have Skattebo as their running back, and I think that the hole that Barkley went through on that 65-yard run yesterday, you could drive a truck through. Okay, I mean, and no Giant even got close to it. So I don't think losing Barkley is the issue for the Giants at all.
No.
I think the Giants defense was the issue yesterday, and you mentioned making tackles, and the guy that I keep on coming back to is Tyler Nubin, and he's just not making plays. He's too slow to make up for a bad read, and unfortunately he makes bad reads and takes the wrong angles and things like that. And so on that Barkley run yesterday, once Barkley got past Musa, who, as you said, didn't set the edge properly, then Nubin had a chance to bring him down after maybe a 10-yard gain or a 15-yard gain or something like that, and he just was slow to react, didn't take the right angle, and he just does not have the speed. Once he does take the wrong angle, he can't make up for a bad decision that way with his speed, because he doesn't have the speed that a safety really needs. And it's really, I feel like, being exposed on a weekly basis now by other offenses.
It absolutely is, Tony. Tyler Nubin is a smart young man. He's an accountable young man. He's an aggressive player. He's got, he's got some ability. But if you go, I just looked it up while you were talking, the relative athletic score that is put on players when they're in the draft class, that's a maximum of 10. Tyler Nubin's relative athletic score is a 3.67. And the Giants told us that his lack of speed and that relative athletic score didn't bother them, didn't matter. But it matters. And as you said, it matters because, not a lot of guys are going to tackle Saquon Barkley when he gets 10 yards through the line of scrimmage and is one-on-one in open space. But again and again this year, we saw maybe Nubin took a step up too far, but he couldn't move quickly enough to even get a hand on Saquon, even slow him down so that somebody else could come along and make that play. We see again and again with Nubin that athleticism, as you said, just doesn't allow him to make up for even the tiniest of mistakes. But I don't want to belabor Tyler Nubin too much. He's not the biggest problem on that defense. The run defense was just atrocious. It looked at the end of the game like they were barely even trying to tackle guys. They were demoralized at that point. I'm not going to kill anybody because I didn't think guys were making business decisions. I just think they were demoralized at that point. Obviously the lack of depth in the secondary is an issue. To be completely fair about this, neither Javon Holland nor Paulson Adebo has been what the Giants hoped they would be when they signed them anyway. Javon Holland is a decent player. He's not one of the best safeties in the NFL. Paulson Adebo is a good cover corner, but Paulson Adebo was brought to the Giants largely because of his ball skills, largely because of the fact that he had a ton of interceptions in his time in New Orleans, and he hasn't made a play on the ball yet. So let's be fair. The Giants aren't, as we sort of kill the depth, the Giants haven't gotten what they expected to get out of their frontline guys either. And again, is that coaching? Is that the situations that they're being put in? Is that the Giants misjudging those players before they paid them? I don't know. But they're not getting what they expected.
Yeah, and that's the striking thing is that, for example, just to come back to Nubin was a ball hawk at Minnesota, and and he hasn't had an interception in a year and a half on the Giants, and how can that happen, right? And as you say, they haven't gotten really the plays from Adebo yet and Holland yet that they might have been expecting to get. The other thing, one of the things I read online last night from Nick's colleague Dan Schneier is that Jalen Hurts has a lot tougher time with zone defenses than man defense, but the Giants played man defense 50% of the time yesterday, and so what's your rationale for playing man defense against a quarterback who seems to have trouble with zone defenses, as many quarterbacks do, right? I mean, so zone defense, and that was one of the stories yesterday that I thought Fangio's defense, was creating problems for Jackson Dart. And so, there's just nothing about what I see on the Giants defense that makes me think that they're even getting the most out of the players that they have, much less whether they have enough good players.
I suppose that part of the rationale would be, and I'm not putting words in Shane Bowen's mouth, but you're relying on Deonte Banks to play every single snap on Sunday. All right. Deonte Banks, I think we've seen for 2.5 years now, Deonte Banks cannot play zone defense. He doesn't communicate well enough. He doesn't read the defense well, or the offense well enough. And I think maybe part of it was simply the fact that you have Deonte Banks out there. You have Corey Black out there playing his first NFL snaps, as a defensive back. You have backup safeties out there. And maybe the only rationale is the best thing for us to do, because we can't be sure of the communication and guys understanding their assignments. Maybe the best thing for us to do is man guys up and see if we can hold up. I don't know, but again, the lack of depth was apparent. I do want to say one thing back up to the Barkley comment. For me, Tony, I'm done with the whole should have signed Barkley stuff. And I'm done with the, with the why couldn't the Giants get to kind of play the Colts are getting out of Daniel Jones? Well, the fact of the matter is with Jones, they did get that kind of play in 2022. And with Barkley, they simply didn't want to build and pay big money, to a running back that wasn't going to do for them what he did in Philly last year. I'm done with those things. The Giants have their quarterback in Jackson Dart. And the Giants have, with Skattebo and Tyrone Tracy, they have the sort of running back room by committee, and obviously they're going to miss Skattebo for the rest of the year. But they have that sort of running back room that they're not, it's a younger room, it's a committee room, it's a room that they're not paying a ton of money to, as Chris Cheney's just commented, it's water under the bridge at this point. The Giants have moved on, the roster has moved on, and and that's all old news. So I'm done with it. But defensively, it is amazing to me. The last thing I'll say about the defense, it is amazing to me entering this season, especially knowing that sooner or later the Giants would go to the rookie quarterback. Entering the season, it felt to me like the Giants expected to be a team that would rely on their defense to keep scores down and try to get as many plays as they could, from an offense and try to win games that way, take advantage of opportunities. And it is very disappointing that this defense is not giving the Giants, what they needed it to give them. So that's I don't know if you have anything else to say about the defense, but whatever other changes get made, and it's relatively pointless to fire Shane Bowen at this point, but whatever other changes get made, the Giants have to have a different defensive coordinator in 2026.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say in defense of the defense is that, as you've said, they are playing very shorthanded. I mean, right? You had Corey Black, just signed back to the Giants, and he's out there playing a significant fraction of the game, and. You've got Art Green playing and getting hurt also during the game. I mean, they've got all kinds of who are these guys actually seeing the field on the defense, because their injury problem is bad, and in fairness, they're going up against good offensive teams, all right, and they're competing with good offensive teams. I mean, not to go back to the debacle last week in Denver, but that same team that they gave up 33 points to in the fourth quarter put up 44 points on Dallas yesterday. It is looking like a pretty darn strong offensive team at the moment, and they played that offense very well for 3/4 of the game. So I think one of the things that we can't forget is that, just in their defense, they are playing a horrendous schedule this season. They have played exactly one terrible team, which of course they lost to, and that was arguably their worst game of the year. But almost every week they're playing a team that is either really good on both sides of the ball or is at least good on one side of the ball. And that's not even changing going forward, right? Because they've got San Francisco coming up, they've got Green Bay and Detroit coming up, and so on and so forth. So their schedule, which looked like a terrible schedule at the beginning of the season, is truly turning out to be a terrible schedule for them. And they've got very, very few weeks where they play a team where you say, "Oh, they should beat this team." It's amazing how difficult their schedule really is.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Tony, let's turn to the offensive side of the ball. And first, terrible injury for Cam Skattebo. Fortunately, I think it's the kind of injury that probably won't impact him long term. He should be back to being Cam Skattebo, in 2026. But you could see how much that impacted Jackson Dart yesterday. You could see that it impacted the team. I mean, the guy even got a nice ovation from the crowd in Philadelphia, from the Santa Claus booing crowd in Philadelphia. He even got a nice ovation as he left the field. So that tells you that, they appreciate the way that the young man plays, and the Giants will obviously miss that. And we wish the young man well.
Yeah, and I think the Giants are putting into place pieces on the offense, and it's just that, well, okay, you look at them now, and their two main weapons, as it turns out this season. I didn't think I'd be saying this at the beginning of the season, but their two main weapons are now out for the year, and so they're really challenged, I think, for the rest of the season to do anything. And about the only thing that you can say that about their offense is that Dart looks like a tremendous player, to be honest. I mean, and I was very interested in the fact that Tom Brady was just praising him over and over and over again on the broadcast. And I figured, well, if Brady thinks this guy is really good, then who am I to argue that? And he still does some rookie things. He's holding on to the ball and running around and scrambling too much and trying to make plays that aren't there. And I think every once in a while he needs to just throw the ball away and live to play another down. But the guy's played a total of what now, 5 NFL games. I forget about the couple at the beginning of the season where he just came in for a play or two, right? And he's a pretty amazing quarterback for a rookie. And I thought he made some really nice throws yesterday, and so you've got to feel good long term about that aspect of the team. And you think about them coming back next year, hopefully with a healthy Neighbors, hopefully with a healthy Skattebo, and with Dart. And Dart has had all of what, a quarter and a half or something like that to play with Malik Neighbors so far. Imagine when Neighbors is healthy, he heals fully. So I think they've got some hope on the offense. The offensive line, which didn't have a great game yesterday, but that's the Eagles' pass rush for you. But in general, their offensive line has become at best a pretty good offensive line. Not a great offensive line, but not the disaster that it used to be. So there's hope for them on offense if you add maybe another piece in the receiving core, maybe a better guard, let's say next year. And so I think they're in good shape on offense. And then I think it just comes down to the holes in the defense and maybe what you do about the defensive coordinator.
Absolutely. And while we're talking about offense and all of that, obviously I wrote about what Tom Brady said about Jackson Dart. I wrote about that this morning at Big Blue View. And for me, if you try to step back, if you try to look at the big picture, if you try to look at where they're going, I've said before, it's clear that the step forward record-wise that we're all looking for, that everybody wants, that jump into relevance and that being in the playoff race every single year, that's not going to happen this year. But we've already seen the signs that on a given Sunday, despite the flaws in this roster, there's enough there to win games against really good teams. And they should have beaten the Broncos, of course. So that's another good team they should have beaten. Probably should have beaten the Cowboys, another team that's doing well that they should have beaten. But nothing that happened yesterday changes what we think is coming in the future. And I think that Brady's comments are confirmation of what we think we see, because Tom Brady knows a heck of a lot more than we do. So, and the theory has always been you get the quarterback in place and then and then the rest of it eventually should fall into place. So, but that's one of those things on offense, Tony. It's, Dart gives them hope. And that's the point. Nothing about Sunday changed that, but their offensive line, Tony, they have solid offensive tackles. I don't know that they'll be able to re-sign Jermaine Illuminor. Hopefully they do. We have optimism that Marcus Bowe would be able to fill that role if if they don't re-sign Illuminor, but that's not proven yet. So hopefully they re-sign Jermaine Illuminor. They do need a little bit of help on the interior of that offensive line. They need another weapon. It's clear to me Darius Slayton's a stand-up guy, great locker room presence, all of that. But Darius Slayton leaves too many opportunities on the field. That's just the way it is. Now, here's a question for you when you think about the offense. We've talked for weeks now about the need for an upgrade at wide receiver. Now you've lost another weapon in Skattebo. At 2-6, is it worth it in your mind for the Giants to go out and make a move more than Ray McLeod, who they signed to the practice squad the other day? And I'm sure he'll be on the 53 soon enough. Jalen Hyatt being inactive yesterday was yet another sign that the Giants are basically done with Jalen Hyatt. But so the question is, trade deadline's in a week and a half. Is it worth it in your mind for the Giants at 2-6 to go out and try to get another wide receiver, for Jackson Dart on this offense?
So in my opinion, it is, depending on the situation. And it has really nothing or very little to even do with this season anymore. I think at 6, I mean, it's a shame at 2-6, but even despite yesterday's game, they should be 4-4 because they should have beaten Denver and they should have beaten Dallas. And if they were, sitting here at 4-4, they'd still be in the playoff hunt, right? Okay, but at 2-6, we'll say they're not, especially given the fact that their schedule is tough. But to me, that's not a reason not to go out and get a receiver, as long as we're talking about someone young that you will have for a few years. And I understand that Joe Shane at this point does not like to do void year spending. I just happen to disagree with him on that. I don't think you have to do Howie Roseman level void year spending, okay? But 30 out of the 32 NFL teams have some void year spending. And, having a couple of tens of millions of dollars in void year spending in today's NFL is really kind of chump change, given what the budgets today are like. And so if they can get a good young receiver who can be their wide receiver 2 for a few years, then I'd be happy to see them do that. I also think it would help Dart's progress to have 2 guys that he can, throw to. And again, he's not going to have neighbors for the rest of the year. So if you want him throwing only to Slayton and Wandale and whoever then is the next guy up, right, all the rest of the season, well, I don't know that that's best for his development either. And so, I feel the same way that I felt about them signing Brian Burns, and that is when they signed him, it was with the future in mind, and they even negotiated the contract and got the long-term contract in place before they even made the trade for Brian Burns. And so, if you do something similar with a really good wide receiver, then yes, I think it's a good move to make.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And I've always thought, as you said, that it's not necessarily about this year. Anybody they bring in cannot be a rental. Okay. And it's about giving Jackson Dart the best chance to develop. And it's about having the best players that you can put around Jackson Dart going forward. It's not necessarily about trying to make a playoff push this year. The only thing I will say about that is there were rumors, or there are rumors, that the Jacksonville Jaguars are listening to offers for Brian Thomas. Okay. He's a first round pick. He's a fantastic player. He's not coming to the New York Giants. There are going to be, if the Jaguars are truly listening to offers for Brian Thomas, there are going to be a lot of teams, calling the Jaguars. The price for that player, for Brian Thomas, the price is going to go up and up and up. All right. And the Jaguars, look, the Jaguars are not going to take what the Giants have to offer, which is basically Evan Neal or Jalen Hyatt and a late round pick.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to happen. The Giants don't have a third round pick in the upcoming draft. They have a second round pick, and I will be stunned if Joe Shane were willing to give that up. That's not going to happen. He's not giving up his first round pick. So I don't see a universe where the Giants have what it will take to get a player like Brian Thomas. So my advice, folks, is to set your sights just a little bit lower.
Yeah, and I have one requirement for any wide receiver that they trade for, if they do that, and please trade for a guy who catches the ball.
Absolutely.
Okay, because I mean, I'm a Darius Slayton fan, and I thought he got robbed of a 68-yard touchdown yesterday. I thought that was a terrible call by the officials. But Darius Slayton does drop too many balls, and you've got Theo Johnson, who's another guy that just drops way too many balls. And Dart, if Dart can put a ball right on you and you can't catch it, it's not going to do any good.
Right.
And they need a reliable catcher of the ball, and that
Which
to me is what they should be seeking.
which is why I have been glad that since Neighbors went down, they are throwing the ball more at Daniel Bellinger,
Mm-hmm.
because the ball gets caught when you throw it there. The thing I'll say about Theo Johnson is you're referencing the play around the 10-yard line where Dart made the beautiful throw. And yes, Theo Johnson is double covered. Okay. But that ball hits him right in the hands, perfectly located. And neither one of those defensive backs touches him before he drops the football. He ham-handed that and dropped it on his own. And you're 6'6", you're 264 pounds. That's the kind of play that you're drafted to make. Okay. That's the kind of play you're drafted to make. And you have to make that. And as you said, I love Darius Slayton, but Darius drops too many easy ones, which there was a point in his career where he had sort of worked through that. But the drop issue seems to be raising its head with him again. And the other reality with Darius Slayton is he doesn't catch the ball in contested catch situations. And you have to help the quarterback. You just have to help the quarterback. When you can make a play, it has to get made. And what you don't want, Jackson Dart was really down on Sunday night. Okay. And he talked about hating to lose and how he'll never accept losing and all of that. But you know what? Getting beaten up wears on you. Having guys, you taking a pounding like he does, and what the Giants were doing, using designed quarterback runs behind 25 points. That one made me shake my head. But what you don't want is for the quarterback to start to lose faith. You can't have that, because he's the guy that you're building around. So if you have an opportunity to help him at this point by adding a player, I think you try to do that. Yeah, go ahead, Tony. I know you were going to say something.
Yeah, and I mean, I think his psychological state is actually an important thing, right? I mean, his stat line doesn't look very great, all that good from yesterday. Like 14 for 24, 190 some odd yards. But really, that stat line should have been more like 17 for 24 and close to 300 yards and a couple of TDs, right? And instead of just the one. And obviously, without Skattebo, you can see the passion inside him when you listen to his remarks to the press after the game. You can see how upset he is, and how I think really angry he is. Although he's not I think really portraying that, but I think he's really ticked off about what's happened the last 2 weeks, and I love that fire
Mhm.
inside him. And so I feel like for his well-being, you have to give him someone else to throw to, not to get into the playoffs this season, but as a building block coming into next year. And to, I mean, what's the Giants offense going to be without Neighbors and without Skattebo, arguably the two biggest weapons on the
Mhm.
team? How do you go through the rest of the season? If you give him a guy for the rest of the season, then it gives him a chance to develop, win some games this year, and so on. I don't think you want to go into the draft needing to get a receiver who's going to step right in. First of all, I don't know whether it's that great a year for receivers in the draft or not, but I think if you have a chance to get him a veteran guy now, you do it for his own sake so that he doesn't become too frustrated as the season wears on.
Agreed. Tony, let's talk about before we wrap it up here. Um let's talk about Brian Daboll. Okay. Um you know, I wrote before Sunday that this sort of last 10 game stretch was the sort of a it's his last stand, basically. It's his last tryout for whether he can be the guy for the Giants going forward. And I don't think anything about Sunday changed that. But look, I do believe that this last 10 game stretch, that is the decision that the Giants ownership will be looking at, is do we have the right guy? We know there's that great relationship with Daboll and Dart. We know that. And that's important. And we know the Giants don't want to put Jackson Dart through the head coach spin cycle like Daniel Jones was put through. But coaching the football team is coaching the whole 53-man operation, the whole 70-man operation, if you want to add the practice squad. It's being the face of the organization. And I do believe that the rest of the season is really about whether they go forward with Brian Daboll or not.
Yeah, and I don't think yesterday changed anything about that, because I don't think that I can't think of decisions that he made yesterday that I thought were bad decisions or anything like that. I feel like he's been dealt an unfortunate hand with the key injuries that this team has suffered, but the things that I think have put him in this spot are still there. And so I I think if they if they go through the rest of the season and finish 2-14, well, I think they have no choice but to get rid of him, whether it's his fault or not that happens. That they've lost the now two key players on the offense, but I think there's still a chance for him to keep the job, and I think that requires winning a few games down the stretch. But I also think it requires them to look like a team that is competitive out there, and not start getting blown out the way they did so many times. If we go back to what happened last year and they start losing, would they lose 30-0 to Tampa Bay last year after the break, and then I think
Mhm.
they got blown out. I can't remember where else they even got blown out last year. I put it out of
It's
my mind,
it's a
but they
blur.
yeah, they were being non-competitive a lot of the time last season, except for that game against the Colts. And so, if you start seeing that happen this year, then I could believe that would spur Mara to make the move. But if they stay competitive, then I can see Daboll coming back. I think as you say, it's on the line. He's got 10 games to prove himself, but to me, proving himself is a relatively low bar. It's remaining competitive and not doing head scratching things that I think will decide it, because I think you're starting to see the talent level on this team becoming pretty good. It's just that they still have
Mhm.
holes to fill. But there are guys on this team that I think other teams would be interested in having, and I haven't
Yeah.
been able to say that about the Giants in a while.
Yeah, and I think what you largely have to see is when they put themselves in position to win, like they put themselves in position to win against Denver, okay? Then you have to win. You whatever else goes on, you have to win. You have to find a way to get your guys in position to make a play. Um, you have to avoid that game-changing turnover. You have to avoid any clock snafus, um, any game day roster management things that blow up in your face, that you could clearly question, before a game started. Um, we'll see what happens over the next 9 games, but for me, that's a big part of what the rest of the season is about. Anyway, Tony, I think that's a good place for us to wrap it up. Did you have anything else that you wanted to hit before we call it a show?
No, I think that's it.
All right, Giants fans, thank you as always for watching. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.